Say my name. I am awake. I am the danger. I am the one who knocks.
Welcome to another episode of Breaking into Breaking Bad with Clifford and Caleb Humphrey. We're going to discuss Season 2, Episode 5, Breakage. Before we get into it, Caleb, do you want to remind everybody about the Patreon opportunity?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for all those that who are listening on, earlier in season two, we started a Patreon account. Um, we're gonna put some bonus content in there. We're gonna add some fun things, maybe some merch. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But one of the things that Cliff and I discussed that we think would be fun is if there's any, people that want to join the account, then we'll uh, we'll pull a lucky person out of there to join us on a podcast. I think we said, maybe the last season on one of the episodes to join in and kind of give us their feedback, and I think that'd be pretty cool. But there should be maybe some other things that we're thinking about doing, but the main reason why we did the whole Patreon account is to it's not necessarily for personal gain. It's for us to maybe, I think Cliff mentioned, buy some microphones to kind of make this able to kind of get it more out there. Right now, we're currently on Apple Podcasts and YouTube. So this will give us the ability to go out further and kind of put it out on the other podcast platforms. So if you're really enjoying it, feel free to do it. I think it's at like $5 a month or something like that. So that's where
Yeah,
we're at.
just consider it a tip jar, basically. And
Yeah.
if you can't afford that, no worries. You can help us out still by rating us on whatever podcast platform you're using and sharing us with any of your friends who'd be interested in the show. So, okay, well, let's get into it. Let's start with a just brief synopsis. What happens in this show, Cabes, if you're just going to sum it up? Like, what are the main events?
Yeah. So this one, I was a big fan of this episode. Yeah, for anyone that, is just listening on that doesn't know exactly about this episode. This was basically it follows mostly Jesse as he goes about. He just received money from Walt in the last episode, and he, pays his debt to the garage guy to, park his RV back there, and he kind of makes amends with a lot of things. And him and Walt get back cooking again, and they're trying to, figure out life after Tuco and what it means to their business, and how they're going to go forward. And then you see a little bit of also Walt, what his life is like now after the last episode, and how he is moving forward with his family and the choices that they're making. And yeah, this one had a lot of really cool aspects. I'm excited to kind of get into more of it. So.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so the title, Breakage, I think it's pretty obvious, but
Yep.
do you want to expand on it at all?
Yeah. So just from my prior, experience in the retail business, it's also called
Yeah,
shrink.
that's right.
So yeah, I mean it's basically the amount of um, product, um, whether that be cash or actual on-hand inventory that you just, cannot account for, loses. You just kind of accept that you're going to, I think in retail, the average amount is 2% that people are expecting to lose. But, that was a good 8 years ago. So I'm sure it's a lot higher now. But yeah, so obviously you hear Jesse talking about that to Walter, and trying to explain it, and Walter obviously has, doesn't care for it at all. But that one was
Yeah, I'll
the more
add,
obvious answer.
right, right. I'll add when they're discussing it, Walt and Jesse, Walt says, that he says, do you think Tuco had any breakage? And then he says, well, Walt says, he says, in fact, I guess he did. He broke bones. And I
Yeah,
think
was he
I
just
think
trying to
in
be
that moment
funny?
we right. No, I think so. I think perhaps a second meaning for this title of the show, of this episode rather, is that there's a realization that they're going to have to be violent. They're going to have to be ruthless if they want to be
Hmm.
successful. And we remember not that long ago, right, when Walt said no more violence, right? And now we in this episode, you don't even recognize the guy, right? He's like, you need to be
Right.
violent. You need to
Hmm.
engage in some breakage of bones. So I
Yeah.
think it's a turning point episode in a lot of ways for that reason. So
Oh, big time.
uh, okay, let's discuss the beginning. It's like always, it's an odd beginning, one that flashes forward again as opposed to flashing backward.
Hmm.
Any I guess it become we gain a little bit of clarity about the beginning of the show at the episode at the very end of the episode. So we'll come to that, but it's kind of an odd beginning that leaves you kind of clueless. So
Right. Yeah. It's
okay,
go ahead.
then the episode really starts with Walt getting chemo, and I
Hmm.
was struck at first watching the way it's really artistic the way they show the
It was.
dripping of the chemo and all that. But you're not it's not clear at first. It looks almost like someone shooting up or something. Like stuff going into
Yep.
veins and we're just reminded that even Walt's chemo is chemical in some aspect and kind of keeping the theme that
Right.
there's chemistry throughout this show and even here with his chemotherapy. It's a very
Yeah.
chemical
No, I was a big fan of
enterprise.
that, especially because they sped it up because he's just sitting there and you see
Right.
the other people in the chairs and you notice that like the people in the other chairs had somebody there,
Mm.
like caring for
Yeah,
them, being there
right.
with
Missed
them, and
that.
he was just there. It's just like
Mm.
this is my
And
life.
you
This
do
is what I'm
see
doing.
that when he's talking with the doctor and the doctor says, "How are you two doing?" And it zooms out and shows the empty chair where Skylar used to sit, and it's
Right.
very lonely. Like you're aware of how lonely it is, and you're right.
Hmm.
Probably when most people are going through that, they have someone there to kind of hold their hand through it. Walt doesn't. So then the last thing I'll point out about that too is the billing woman gives him that little button
Yeah.
that says hope is the best medicine, and that he immediately throws it in the trash.
Yeah.
Right? Anything symbolic to that, you think?
I mean that part was just tough to watch. I mean, just like it obviously shook him. We don't know what the dollar amount was, but he was expecting for a
Right.
discount, and that was the discount. And this guy, if you take away everything that he's done, he's still fighting for his life, and like this is what he's has to deal with, and
We're reminded that not only is he having to pay for his chemotherapy, but he also has to pay for the days that he spent in the hospital after his quote unquote fugue state,
yeah, 13
which was the
grand.
price, yeah, for the price of his alibi. So
Hmm.
it was really startling when we learned that he's now made a total profit of $0 once
Hmm.
all of his expenses are added up. And we'll get to that scene later on, but it's obvious why Walt has to return to cooking because the money issue is very urgent and
Hmm.
he's sick. He's not his most robust self.
Yep.
The other thing we see is Skylar's smoking habit. She's trying to hide it by flushing a empty carton of or an empty pack of cigarettes down the toilet. Well, I mean, that's a horrible idea. I would never do that.
Horrible.
But I don't know why she thought that was going to work. But
Hmm.
we're starting to see that Skylar's secrets they're connected in a way to Walt's secrets. And Skylar is definitely, she's a hard read. On one hand, she's doing really well in the boundaries area, where she's
Hmm.
not letting Marie do what she wants, which is she wants everyone to forget about the tiara fiasco.
Right.
And Skylar's like, I'm not going to let you do that, right? And it's similar to the way she's kind of treating Walt. She's like, you tell me what you're up to right here, right now, and I thought she was pretty good about that, right? It's not a pride thing. She says, if you don't respect me enough, Marie, to tell me to apologize, then I can't engage with you as a sister because you're not treating me with, I thought that was good of her.
Yeah.
I'm still, what did you think?
No, I thought that was great. I did see a difference in how Skylar was treating Walt. I feel like after that conversation we saw in the last episode, where he still
Mm,
denied it, and she had the same abrupt conversation with Marie, and Marie admitted it, and it looked like it was all good. But Walt still didn't confess. But it looked like she wasn't leaving during the day. Like she was having conversations, and
hmm
she even asked Walt, like, "Hey, do you think uh what are the I can't believe I'm missing this right now. Do you think your old partner will um pay for this
Oh yeah,
13
Gretchen and
grand,
Elliot. Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
oh, man, there you go. Look at
Well,
you. You
she's
already know it better than me.
right, right. Well, she's pretty desperate, right? She'd been on the phone with
Hmm.
insurance people, and God bless anyone who has to do that. So we
Yep.
understand the frustration there, but she's definitely in a certain state of mind, and she's very determined, right? I'm not going to let anyone push me around. Is kind of her thing. I'm not gonna. She's
Right.
determined to
It was
with
like she was
Walt.
tired almost with Walt. Like she didn't want to deal with it anymore. She was over it.
Right, right. I mean, the fact that she's not buying the fugue state thing one bit
Right.
means that, I mean, that's huge, because that means she knows
Hmm.
there's something really, really big going on. If she doesn't buy the fugue state thing, then what the hell was he up to those 3 days, right? Like,
Well, that's
what's
what I'm
going
thinking. Like,
on?
if you're
And
Skylar and you really don't think that he was having an affair, like, what
mhm,
in the world would you think that he was doing this whole time? Like,
right,
uh, yeah, it's
such that he would feel the need to come up with such a ridiculous alibi and
right.
stand there naked in the grocery store.
Yeah, yeah. Her mind's got to be
But
racing.
I thought she's probably like the smoking thing. Okay, it's probably the case that she had a smoking habit earlier in her life, but it also seemed to me that she's trying to kind of give Walt a taste of his own medicine
Hmm.
by being like, well, what if I did do something bad, and I'm just going to deny it? What are you going to do? What if I just deny it?
Right.
So it seemed to me, mixed in with her like determination to maintain boundaries and all of that, she's also got a high degree of resentment, and she's trying to manipulate Walt, into opening
Right.
up,
She's playing
which
his game,
I think,
which is
yeah, right, right, which is a pretty human way to act, I think. But
right.
okay, let's talk about Hank. So Hank gets this
Hmm.
big promotion. I'm trying to remember my New Mexico geography. So they're in Albuquerque, and he's going to be going down to El Paso. El Paso is on the
Right.
border of Texas
Correct.
and New Mexico, I
Yep.
think, right? So,
Yep. Yeah,
and
it's
Albuquerque's like
more
what, kind of in the middle of the
heavy.
state?
Yeah, I think so.
It's
Yeah.
more heavy.
Hmm.
What do you mean? What do you mean
But
it's more heavy?
well, I mean, a lot more action going on. You obviously
Okay,
got a
and
lot of drugs
dangerous too,
crossing the
right?
border. Yeah, exactly. Well, you hear Marie talking about how the cartel. She says, they just leave human heads all over the place over there. It's like, why would we want to go there? Like
Right.
we're you're better off working in getting the Jessies and the Wendy's of the Albuquerque. They're not doing that kind of thing. But one thing
Right.
I liked about that conversation with Hank and his superior is that his superior is like, well, now that Tuco's gone, what's going on? He's like, well, we've been hearing talks of Heisenberg, and it's like, well, how did Heisenberg, the name Heisenberg, get out there at this point? Because
Yeah,
the
right.
only way it could have
The
gone
only
out
people who knew about it.
is Tuco, right? So Tuco must have
Yeah,
talked it up, like, hey, this is my supplier, and this is it. Like that's the only way it would have gone out, really, at all, because he
right,
was the only one that
right,
knew him
right,
as Heisenberg. So
right.
um, that had to have been kind of like the beginning of it. But yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah. Okay, so what the heck happens in the elevator? Is it a heart attack?
It's more like a panic attack, like
Okay.
I mean, he's obviously suffering some from some kind of PTSD, and it looks like from everything that we've seen of Hank up until now, he appears that he is
Right.
very good at his job. But after
Confident. Yeah.
responding the way, I mean, he responded perfectly to the situation with
Textbook.
with
Yeah.
Tuco, and he then described it like, if you see a cockroach come out of the refrigerator, you just act. You don't think about, well, how do I do this? You just respond quickly. And he did that. But I think
Yeah.
it almost appeared that this was his first engagement of that magnitude, and he is dealing with it now.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah. Okay, so we can jump to the very end of the episode. So for whatever reason, he throws the teeth, Tuco's teeth, his prize, his trophy. That's really what it is, right? It's a trophy,
Right.
like antlers from a big hunt. He throws it in the river, and I thought he had a heart attack, but as you describe it now as a panic attack, that makes a lot more sense. So he's really feeling like he needs to distance himself from that
Hmm.
experience, and so he's not going to carry around this memento, this memory of Tuco in a way it's kind of haunting him, and so he
Right.
gets rid of it, which seems like a pretty, I don't know, a healthy thing to do, I guess, if you're
And that
feeling
happens
some kind
right
of
after the
psychological.
scenario with the
Yeah,
Schrader
the beer
bras
bottles.
bruised or whatever, busting, and
Yeah,
that might have been like the, like, what, I got to handle this. And
yeah,
yeah,
because was he thinking Tuco's guys are going to come after me or something? Is like,
yeah, I
who
think he's
knows?
just on high alert at this point, and
Yeah,
he's just responding to any kind of crazy stimuli like that.
yeah. Okay. Real briefly, Marie, when Skylar demands that she apologize, we can see it's very difficult for her. We know she's seeing a counselor named Dave,
Hmm.
so she's dealing with some stuff. She accuses Skylar of punishing her by demanding that she apologize, but then she does apologize. And my question is, do you think she's sincere?
I do. I do, because the way Skylar presented it. Before, Skylar kind of did the exact same thing that she did with Walt. Like, I'm waiting, but like she literally said, like, I can't I can't go on. It's now or never.
Hmm.
Like she kind of put it as a final, like, you either do this now or we're done type of scenario.
Wow. Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
I think Marie really took that to heart finally.
Hmm. Yeah. So boundaries with Skylar seem to work well with Marie then. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's right. Okay, so let's move on to Jesse then. So we left Jesse in very dire straits.
Hmm.
Didn't know where he was going to sleep that night, and he finally got the money from Walt. It was impressive, I thought, that the first thing he does is come back and pay the money to the junkyard guy. Now he needs
Hmm.
him. Also, he needs a place to park the RV.
Right.
So maybe he was thinking that's the best move. But he probably could have found another place for cheaper. So I want to give Jesse the benefit of the doubt and say he was not simply looking for an RV parking spot. He also wanted to pay his debt to that
Right.
guy. He felt bad about it. And so
Hmm.
he goes and pays him all that he wants. And then I thought it was a very important point when it comes down to buying a car. He looks at the typical Jesse looking car and says, "I don't want that one. I want this other one." And the guy says, "Are you serious?" Right? Jesse seems to have made a responsible choice
Hmm.
with his car. Do you agree?
Yeah, I loved this episode for this reason, like solely because this was the first time that you see Jesse, like in one of the when Jesse a couple episodes back when you see Jesse goes to his parents' house and he goes through some old stuff from high school and he sees actual papers, like from Mr. White saying like, why don't you apply yourself? To me, this was this was Jesse actually applying himself, and like
Hmm.
he didn't smoke it like he did with everything other all the other money that he's gotten. Perhaps maybe the $600 that he got before, but I don't it's not 100% clear on that. But
We don't
you're
know.
right.
Yeah.
Like he's like, hey, my word is my bond. I'm gonna pay my dues. And the fact that he was able to be smart and buy the cheaper car because it was the economical choice, and then go, then he goes and gets a apartment, and he negotiates from a position of more like the whole desperate Jesse is not there anymore. He's just, even though he kind of does say that to Jane, um, that like, hey, listen, my parents kicked me out. I had to do this, but it felt more like it just felt more like he has taken a not just a step, but a couple steps in the direction of where he
Hmm.
needs to be as far
Yeah.
as his like personality goes.
Yeah. Because he could have lied. He could have come up with some other reason for why he didn't have a job and why he
Right.
needed an apartment. Um, it's not exactly flattering, especially to tell a girl, my parents kicked me out. I mean, it sounds kind
Right.
of pathetic, but he owns it and he doesn't try and come up with some, fib about why he doesn't have W-2s and a pay stub and all that. But
What what did
he's
she
having to
say?
pay
No,
for it for sure.
N was it no dogs,
DBAs.
no, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
NPA,
Don't be an
yeah,
asshole. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and he that's another thing he owns up to. He's like, what does that mean? He doesn't know. Yeah, and he's humble enough about that. Um, okay, so we don't know how he communicated with Walt, but somehow they communicate and agree to meet back in the desert and do some more cooking.
Mhm.
Somehow that happens, and they're sitting there cooking, and there's this big blow up, right? And Jesse's clear-sighted enough to know we're not going to be able to sell this stuff as easily. Just because you cook it doesn't mean we're going to be able to turn it into cash. And Jesse shows he's got street smarts. He knows that. What does he say? He knows that the DEA they're watching him, and so he's
Right.
got to be more careful than
Mhm.
otherwise. And so, he what does he say? He's never going to have any of the crystal there at his apartment. He's going to do these
Mhm.
drop offs, But let's discuss his negotiation with Walt and his
Oh,
conversation with
I
Walt in
loved
the
it.
RV. Yeah,
I
why did you
loved it.
love it?
It was the first time Jesse addresses Mr. White as Walt, which to
As Walt.
me
Yep. Yep.
it was a big it was a big move for Jesse to address him as an equal, not as a superior,
Yeah.
you
There you
know.
go.
And
Yeah.
he's looking at it finally from the big picture of the needs of both of them from the partnership, and we've talked about this. It's like you need me more than I need you, like
Right.
you need this a lot more than I do. Which is a big difference from last episode when Jesse was literally like he was, grasping at everything.
Why are
But
you
I
blue? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. No, I loved it, because he was finally sticking up for himself, and in that, and you could tell in Walt's like just physical response that he was like, wow, like this, okay, like he had to respect that in a sense that
Yeah.
Jesse was talking to him that way. And like, hey, listen, you said you handle the cook and I handle the business. Let me handle the business. You don't get a say in any of this.
Right. Yeah. So there's a couple things that stood out to me. He says to Walt, he says, there is no we at one point, right? And this goes back to the point we were discussing in the last episode. What's the nature of their partnership, right? Are they two guys that like sometimes cooperate and benefit from one
Right.
another, or is there a common good between them, right? And what the way that Walt was treating Jesse was that there is no real common good between them. They're just two guys that
Hmm.
like happen to benefit each other. But at the end of last episode, Walt does give half of his money, and it is in a way his money to Jesse. And so in that sense, Walt is recognizing that there is some kind of partnership. So here Jesse is pushing Walt even more and say, you have been treating me like there is no we. And now, and let's not forget how this whole thing started, right? When Walt threatened Jesse. And at that time, Jesse did not know Walt's motive. He didn't know why he was getting involved in all of this. And so
Hmm.
now that Jesse knows, he can say with confidence, you need me more than I need you. Because Jesse could move to Oregon, and figure something out, whereas Walt still has his cancer hanging over his head.
Right.
So he says there is no we, and he says, and then when Jesse says, "Who said anything about you? You don't get a vote." Reiterating, I think the point that Jesse is claiming total control over the distribution side.
Hmm.
Now, as we see, Walt is going to have to get involved in that, but I think you're right. Jesse is kind of stepping up in a way and showing a kind of entrepreneurial spirit, if you will.
Right.
One thing that comes out in that conversation that I think is important to flag is when his Walt is describing how much money he's had to spend on his alibi and all of this. He says, I don't have any money for my family, and he says that was, quote, the whole damn point, right?
Hmm.
And we're reminded that Walt's motive that he's telling himself is the only reason I'm doing this is to benefit my family. And we're aware that he's done nothing, he's gained nothing for his family, and all he has done is caused possibly irreparable harm to his family in the process. And so we feel the frustration there. And then Walt kind of has a humbling moment too when he admits to having a learning curve, and he
Yeah.
admits, yeah, things didn't go.
It's a
And
nice way of putting it.
he even says, I was overly ambitious, which I thought was very humbling of him, right? And
Hmm.
what's he referring to? I think he's referring to when Tuco says, okay, bring us, this many pounds, and Walt says, we'll bring you even more than that.
Yeah. Four
Like he's
pounds.
like, we can just do this, we can just crank this out. So Walt knows he's had to gain some humility here, and part of what that looks like is letting Jesse do what he wants to do. And I got to be honest, I really like Badger. I like Badger, but I don't know
Hmm.
if I would trust Badger. I would want to depend on Badger. I mean, he's good at doing the helicopter thing with the sign, but I don't know. You've really got to have some
But does
ruthlessness and
does
street
Walt
smarts.
does Walt know Badger and Skinny Pete? Does he know these people yet? Like he doesn't. He's
No,
assuming that these
no,
are just Jesse like characters, with the same type
Right,
of
right.
whatever, but like to
Yeah.
me, it was almost like when Jesse said, "Why don't we be Tuco?" Walt, in a sense, almost looked like, "Wait, why didn't I think of that?" But no, no, no,
Hmm.
you're wrong because you thought of it. That's wrong. And like he didn't want to give that credit to Jesse, um, which I thought was the first time that Jesse's thought of the big picture. It's like, okay, well, we don't want to jump in bed with another Tuco character. Tuco's gone. There's no Tuco right now that they know of. And you notice that because Walt was, you could see him kind of probe Hank later on in the episode because he was like, where do these criminals come from? Like it felt like
Yeah,
he was
yeah.
trying to find out if there was a replacement to Tuco or
Huh.
just anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, to me, I thought Jesse Walt at first was like, oh, that's a good idea, but you came up with it, so no, bad idea, Jesse. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And two, when Jesse says, "Why don't we be Tuco?" I think it's right after that he says, "There is no we." And so what do you mean? What Jesse means by "Why don't we be Tuco?" He means me and Skinny Pete and Badger and the other guy. Like, why don't we be Tuco? You are not a part of this, Walt. You're not part of the we. The partnership,
Hmm.
the business that Jesse is thinking of is strictly those guys.
Right.
Now, when they're having this conversation, Jesse is cooking there with Walt in the desert. So it would seem to me that Jesse's doing a little bit of both. He's assisting with the cooking and he's helping with distribution and taking on
Right.
the risk and all that. There's the part in the show when we sort of see how successful they are at pushing the crystal and the
Yeah.
music changes and it's sped up and they're just going around and you just I don't know, I had the sense of like, oh man, there's no way this is going to just continue to work well for them. And I mean, we know how ruthless Tuco was, and we know you have to be that way. Everyone has to respect you, and by that, fear you. They have to know not to mess with you. They have to, you have to have such a degree of prestige that people don't want to test the waters with you.
Hmm.
And so and I think that Walt knows that. And so when he shows up at Jesse's, how does he know where Jesse lives? I don't know either, but that's another one of these things. But he shows up at Jesse's with the revolver and and tells him like, you're going to have to be ruthless, take care of it, right? I mean, this is a Walt we've never seen before. I mean, this is such a 360, sorry, a 180 from the Walt that was sitting there in agony in the basement with Crazy Eight, begging for a reason not to kill the guy.
Yeah, that Walt
Walt,
doesn't really exist anymore. This was Heisenberg basically showing up at Jesse's house. Kind of back to the
huh,
whole
yeah,
Dr. Jekyll and Hyde type thing.
right, right. Well, it's a very serious and dramatic change in Walt, but this is the moment, this is the point on which I'd say he's clear-eyed, where Jesse is naive. Jesse's like, oh, don't worry about it. Skinny Pete's not, it's not a problem, right? No, it's going to be a problem. Skinny Pete's probably going to end up beat up and dead somewhere unless they send a message, quote unquote, to everybody that they're not to be messed with.
Right. Yeah. What did you think of Jesse's um, pitch to to the guys? I noticed he had about 50 cups available for the four of them, but
Yeah, that's
um,
good. And Coke and pretzels.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
there were some
And it was
refreshments.
funny. Yeah, and him describing how he's gonna dress up his crib there and make it a real
Plasma
pad.
TV.
Yeah, right. Right. Um, yeah, gosh, I like Badger. Anyway, yeah, I couldn't help but cringe a little bit just because we know these guys, we know Skinny Pete and we know Badger, like they're just comic relief, not serious people they don't live life very well. What makes us think that they could be dependable business partners? So I'm not that hopeful. I mean, I want to say on one hand, well, Jesse, why didn't you pick better people? Why didn't you go out there and pick better people? But of course, like the whole name of the game here is trust. And so
Hmm.
Jesse's got to find people that he thinks he can trust. Now, why he thinks he can trust Badger when he literally left Badger out in the desert, why wouldn't Badger stab him in the back? I don't know. But, at least in Jesse's mind, these are, I'm not going to say friends because he tells them, look, you cross me and you're out. It's not like, well, we're friends, so I'll cut you some slack. No,
Hmm.
no, he's treating them like business partners. But I think he's relying on them because there's some degree of trust. So,
Yeah.
all
No,
right, anything else you
I
wanted?
felt like he did that whole like pitch very well. Like he had an answer for every question they had, and
He
I
stands his
thought that
ground.
was just,
He's going to get two
yeah. No
grand
matter
for
what,
every
I get
ounce,
my
you
cut.
know?
I thought that was pretty another step into this episode of what Jesse is kind of hoping to become. I thought that was very telling.
Yeah. Okay, anything else?
Mm, don't think so. Oh, do you um before the Schrader bruise started popping, did you notice how purple that bedroom was before
Oh
Hank
gosh.
woke up? It's like a
Yeah,
purple
very
giant just
purple.
threw up in there. Yeah, it's bad. But yeah,
Right.
no,
Yeah, no,
I think
it's Marie's. Well,
I think
I
that's
think this
what I
this
got.
episode, I really enjoyed this episode too, and I think in part it's because the characters are really, going through some difficult, interesting challenges. Whether that's Skylar, whether that's Marie, whether that's Hank, whether that's Jesse, or whether that's Walt. They're all kind of facing challenges, and I think everyone kind of performed well. When it comes to the various challenges that were before them, I think everybody did well here.
Yeah, yeah. It was a big step from the down episode prior, where
Ooh,
everyone was really
yeah,
getting
that
kicked.
was such a down. Yeah, right. Okay, well, we'll leave things there and we'll pick up next time with episode 6.